Shalom, shalom. This week I want to open up by talking about what's going on. It's been an extremely difficult, taxing time on our nation. Throughout this war, we're up to 505th day of the war, and all along there's been this symbol, the Bibas family, that we've looked at this mother protecting her children as she was dragged off to Gaza, and we were hoping and praying that somehow, it's like a symbol of hope, that somehow this mother and children made it through this horrendous ordeal, and the hope was kept alive despite the odds, and everybody waited with bated breath for Thursday, when Hamas said they were releasing the bodies of 4 of its captives. One was Oded, and the others Shiri and Kfir and Ariel, who they claimed were all dead. Now, we don't believe a thing that Hamas says, good or bad or otherwise, because we don't understand how they operate. They're just evil. So until we brought the bodies back to Israel and analyzed them, it wasn't confirmed. But unfortunately, last night it was confirmed. Indeed, there was Oded and babies Kfir and Ariel were killed. They were killed earlier on. But the body that was supposed to be Shiri, the mother, was not Shiri. It was just some random Gazan woman that they put in the coffin instead. And so, unfortunately, as we know, Hamas's cruelty knows no bounds. This suffering for Shiri's family, for Yardan, the husband who just came back himself from the crazy cruelty of under Hamas, being in captivity so long, and finally we thought maybe he'd at least get a little bit of closure of knowing what happened to his family, but no, it continues to be tortured by this question, him and the families, of what happened to Shiri. We don't know where she is, and it's really difficult, and I'm having a really hard time, and when I have a hard time, I try to go to specifically the Parshat Shavua and to look for some source of comfort or at least counsel on a situation. And Mishpatim did not let me down. I found a few things in there that I find very connective to what's going on as messages for the Jewish people and messages for the entire world. And I'd like to share that with you. So, Mishpatim, it opens up, there's a whole bunch of laws about how we're supposed to interact with other people. And to tell you the truth, most of these laws are how to be a decent person. I don't think that these laws are strictly for Jewish people. I think that any good, decent human being, it tells you how to act, how you should deal with people. And when people have done things that are wrong, that are very wrong, what they should do, the compensation or what action should be taken against them. And I think some of these are really meant for the greater world as well. And I want to share the thoughts that I think just ones that relate to what we're talking about now. And I want to start by the fact that Hamas is actually mentioned in these parsha. Of course, it's not talking about Hamas at that time, Hamas who it is today, but there's no accidents. It's not just a cute coincidence that the word Hamas is in this parsha. And look what it says. I mean, it's just so obvious to me that this is a message for us, for the world, for today. It says, we'll read it in Hebrew and then in English. Okay, Lo tisa shem hashav al teshet yadecha im rasha liyot eid Hamas. So what is eid Hamas? It says, don't accept a false report. Do not extend your hand to the wicked to be a venal witness. And then it goes on to say, do not be a follower of the majority for evil. Do not respond to a grievance by yielding to the majority to pervert the law. And what do we see today? What do we see with Hamas followers? As we know, Hamas, they just bold-faced lies that they put out, And this is like a warning, I think, to the rest of the world also, is that don't listen to liars. They're lying, and don't let your hate let you get carried away, your anti-Semitic hate, that you just go on this newest band of anti-Semitic lies because it works for your hatred. And what God tells the people is that this is something that is so full of disdain and it's so horrible, and that the people that do this are going to end up paying the piper. You can't live a life full of falseness and hate and destruction, and it's going to lead to your own demise, as we know. And I'll read some other things and then we'll go into wrapping that up. But this Hamas thing, and because then I want to go into the another pasuk that says, and it's talking about murder and manslaughter, which we very obviously have an abundant of murder like Hamas to our people, that we suffered so greatly. And this says, Ki yazid ish are'ehu lehargo ba'arma me'im mizbechi tikachel lamut. So this is an interesting pasuk that I think can have layers and layers of meaning. And this is really, when it's given, as talking to the Jewish nation if someone murders another Jew. But I think, again, there's layers of meaning, and that this really applies to the outer greater world as well, which they have murdered our people. And it says, one who strikes a man and dies shall surely be put to death. Okay, I believe that these people should suffer the death penalty. They didn't just kill somebody, they brutally murdered our people in the worst of ways. These people should not be living for another second. Okay, so they should be put to death. There should be a death penalty, I think. And it says that if he acts against his man intentionally, which we know the October 7th was very planned, very intentional, to kill him with guile, it says to take him from Mizbechi, from God's altar, she should take him to die. So that's a very interesting thing. What does it mean for my altar to die? I think what God is saying is there is no sanctuary. There is no sanctuary for somebody who commits murder. Now, we know the people of Hamas and all these terrorist organizations claim that they're acting in the name of God. They try to take some sort of sanctuary for themselves in the fact that they're doing what they believe is a godly act. And I don't care where they're hiding. They need to be plucked out, even if it's on Har HaBayit. You see them with pictures of themselves. In all the homes in Gaza, they all have these pictures of Har HaBayit, where our Holy of Holies is supposed to be. And they take this sanctuary in their false thinking, in their false ideas that they're acting in the way of God. And God's saying, you can't hide under this illusion that you think you're acting for me. Murder, there is no time ever where someone who murders is acting in a godly manner. Murder is evil, pure, unadulterated evil, and that there should be a death penalty for these people. So that's in the Torah, and I believe in that. And then I want to say the last thing that I saw, and then I'll wrap it up, that made me think of it, is this what gives me hope, because it's talking in the Parsha about helpless people. It talks about the stranger and the orphan and the widow, and that you have to treat them with extra sensitivity. You have to be super sensitive and make sure that you don't cause them any more harm or pain. Now, first of all, Hamas caused people to be orphans and widows all over. So they put them in that predicament in the first place, and they continue to make orphans and widows suffer every single day by the things that they do, by the ongoing torture. This is the most despicable thing in the eyes of God. And what does God say when she says you shouldn't make orphans and widows suffer? He says, Im anet oto ki im tza'ok yitz'ak elai shamoa eshma tza'akato. And it's this in English. It says, if you dare to cause him pain, or if he shall cry out to me, I shall surely hear his outcry. Now, I believe with every fiber in my being, I believe that God will not let this wickedness continue. We've already managed to act in the ways of God. Our unbelievable IDF has done so much to obliterate lots of evil, but these people need to go. They need to go. And God is saying, if his people cry out, and you know what? Our people have cried out. And this is the cry of agony and pain that's been ongoing and reached a new level on day 504 when we got this horrible information. The cries out to God from the pain that we have because we love our fellows. We love our people. Every Shiri and the children and Odette and every single person who's been murdered, they're our family, and we cry out in that pain. And God tells us further on in the Parsha, first of all, he gives us a promise that he's going to hear our pain and end our suffering. And this should be also a warning to the world that God will. We see it in all the past, in all of our history. God will listen to our cries in the end, and anybody evil who schemes against his people with this kind of evil ideals, they'll be obliterated. They will be obliterated, and we've seen it time and time again. So we have that hope as a Jewish people, but one plea that I want to make is that it also says in this parsha, there's a promise from God. God says that we can live in peace and everything can be good for us in our country, but he implores us to follow in his ways. And now following in God's ways is not because there's some God, egomaniac God that wants us to do things for him. Following in God's ways is God asking us, God's begging us to do what's good for us as people. If we act kindly, if we act with a heart, if we help one another out and we're good to one another, this is what God wants because it's good for us, not because it's good for him. You can't do anything for God that's good for him. He wants for us to have a good life. And he tells us if we act in his ways, he will make sure. He gives us a promise to take care of us. We have to all come together and do that. We have to act with love one another. We have to, before we get angry at somebody who thinks really, really different from us or wants something really different from us, and we say something nasty or do something nasty or outcast them, we have to remember, we have to close our eyes, take a deep breath, remember Shiri, remember her children, remember everybody who suffered on October 7th, and say, I am not going to let that happen again. I'm going to be good. I'm going to do my part. I'm going to be good to one another, and that we should all merit God's protection. We should all merit God's protection. Shabbat Shalom.